You're listening to a podcast from the Institute for Work-Based Learning at Middlesex University. Coming up,
we've had projects, for example, on underwater warfare, haemoglobinopathy. We've had a captain of a ship. We've had people in the ministry and the church.
we take a closer look at the Professional Doctorate. What is it? Who's it for? And what's the difference between a Professional Doctorate and a PhD?
I'm Professor Carol Costley, and I'm the Academic Director of the Doctorate in Professional Studies at Middlesex University.
Hello, I'm Dr. Mehmet Dikerdem. I'm the Programme Leader for the Doctorate in Professional Studies.
Hello, I'm Ben Witchalls. I'm currently working with BP, undertaking a work-based doctorate looking at risk and impact.
I'm Dr. Kate Maguire. I'm part of the core team at the Institute for Work-Based Learning at Middlesex University.
And I'm Chris Jameson. This is a podcast from the Institute for Work-Based Learning at Middlesex University. Carol, what's special about the Professional Doctorate?
The Doctorate in Professional Studies at Middlesex is a doctorate which reaches out to all professional areas, and in fact all areas of working life where you can engage in knowledge which is at doctorate level.
So what point academically do you have to be at?
Well, it's not so much as an academic point, although there is clearly at doctorate level it has to be underpinned by university level learning, which is of the highest calibre that you can reach in a university. It's about people having particular advanced experience in an area. So you can't really undertake this doctorate straight from doing a degree, for example. You would have to have had work experience, and you'd have to be in a position within that workplace in order to undertake a particular research and development project which is based in your work practice.
OK, Carol, introduce me to Ben here.
Yes, we're fortunate enough to have one of the candidates on the programme with us, Ben Witchalls. Ben, maybe you'd like to introduce the kind of doctoral project that you're engaging with.
Yes, thank you, Carol. I currently work within the oil and gas sector, and my doctorate initially has been focused around impact assessment and sustainability, which was very much a need that the sector felt it should try and develop capacity in that area. What I've particularly enjoyed about it is that we can really respond to business needs as they come up. So recently I've changed the focus to a small extent, but significantly, around risk and decision making, which I've really enjoyed being able to do that journey with the company, understanding their needs and trying to respond to that by bringing in some of the academic work in that area.
And I suppose what you're saying there is at the very heart of work-based learning, isn't it? That because you are in your work as you're studying, when you see the nature of your job changing or moving in a particular direction, your academic work can follow in the same direction.
Absolutely, yes. Of course, risk has been always a major part in the workplace for any big industry in particular. But it's all set within a context, and trying to understand that context and trying to understand what the business imperatives are is something that I get very energised by, and I hope I can add value to the business in that way.
And Carol, you are Ben's advisor. Tell me about how that relationship works.
I've been with Ben since he started on the doctorate programme. My job is to stay with him till he gets to the end, so that I know his work and his background, his rationale for undertaking the project, the methodologies he was using. Now, when he'd finished the initial introductory part of the doctorate, we brought in a consultant who has some specialism in his field. And it would be interesting to hear from Ben how that's worked for him to have this balance of someone like myself who knows about this doctorate, what's required in order to reach university level standards, and having the consultant with that very specific learning that's unique to the particular project he's chosen to develop.
I approached Carol and I said I was trying to shift the focus slightly away from impact assessment and sustainability and more towards risk and decision making. It's something that often across the sectors, it's difficult to get that learning. And John, my consultant, has been able to provide me with experience that he's had within, for example, the pharmaceutical industry, within behaviour psychology, and for me to try and apply that to make it relevant to how the businesses make the decision on these bigger infrastructure projects, for example, has been fascinating. I feel as though I'm getting to the end and it is really having an impact, and I've presented to several industry conferences the work that I've done. Based on the feedback then, often I can adapt it or focus in on an area that seems particularly relevant.
I really want to paint some pictures of the sort of people who do the professional doctorate through the Institute for Work-Based Learning at Middlesex University. Let's bring in Dr. Kate Maguire and Mehmet Dikerdem now. Let's talk about the progress through the programme and the options people take. Kate, do you want to kick off?
Yes, I think I'd like to go back to the point about what distinguishes it from a PhD. And there are a number of features, but one of them is this concentration on self-awareness and beginning, if you like, the research on self. And to really facilitate that with a candidate, we have the first module, which is called a review of learning, which is your personal and professional learning. Everything that you do on this program actually can be used in your final project, so nothing is wasted. So when you start that first module of a review of learning, it's trying to position yourself, let the reader know who you are and why you're doing what you're doing, and what is it that you are beginning to identify or have identified in your work situation that you would like to explore further and in an informed way. Practitioners usually come along because they want to change something in their organization or in the practices. And so we begin with, well, why do they want to do that? And who are they?
The other thing which you and I do together is admissions. So that's something we, I think, tacitly look for. In other words, does this person have the capacity to develop a voice? And unlike the PhD, what we're really interested in is the I, because in a lot of PhD texts and things like that, people are actually told not to use the I, they use a third person. Whereas in what we do, the I is of the essence. In the interviews, say, look, you are the CEO of your own doctoral process. In other words, unlike the PhD, where the supervisor is meant to know everything, one, we don't call it supervisor, we call it program advisor, which creates a different kind of relationship, which combines mentoring, coaching, and of course, assessment to some extent. Then it's the bringing that voice out. Who are you? Where are you coming from? How do you position yourself? And can you reflect upon your practice? And we always pick on the best practitioners, people who are working at the cutting edge of their professions. And we say, look at your own practice. Look at your organization. See if you can generate something from your practice which will start introducing changes into that organization. And also, think about your community of practice. What can you share with these people?
Every person, every candidate who comes is unique. Yep. And has a unique set of circumstances.
Ben, does that ring true there, what you've been hearing from Mehmet and Kate?
Absolutely, yes. I think how I've been able to create an identity for myself within the organisation is very much around choosing projects which I can really see feeding into this work around my work-based doctorate and making a case why that would be an important project for me to work on. Every large organisation needs internal expertise. They have, in many ways, internal consultancies, and having the ability to do that, and then also to take that beyond just your own organisation but to the wider industry is something that I particularly enjoy.
Carol Costley.
Yeah, I think people might be interested in the kind of person that we get on this programme. You've met Ben, and we have people from almost every professional area that you can think of. We've even brushed with the law. So we've had projects, for example, on underwater warfare, haemoglobinopathy. We've had a captain of a ship. We've had people in the ministry and the church and people in Islam
traditional boat building.
Yeah.
And I have to admit that is something that I particularly enjoyed. We have monthly seminars at the Hendon campus. It's great to step outside of your day-to-day work environment, with the same people often, and just to meet people that you can really connect with because of what they're looking at. It may be something similar to me, but in a totally different field, which I wouldn't normally come across outside of my circle of friends from university, etc. So I've really enjoyed having that input, and to take that back, into my work.
It's fascinating stuff. And for anybody listening to this who is tempted to do a professional doctorate through Middlesex University, I'd like each of you around the table just to give me one benefit that people will get if they undertake the course. Let's start with you, Carol.
They own their own programme and they're going to do something which enhances themselves and their work.
Mehmet.
Think of a triangle. Good for the candidate, enhances a profession, becomes top in the profession. Good for the organisation, organisational change. Good for the university, more knowledge produced.
Kate Maguire.
It values the practitioner. I think this is very important. It's almost, for me, it's a philosophy. It's how we look at knowledge. And I think that it's wonderful that practitioners can get academic credit.
Finally, from someone who's actually doing a professional doctorate, Ben Witchalls.
I think for me, it gives me real motivation to ensure that there is coherence to my work and something to really aim towards, where you feel as though you're adding value and you're not just following the opportunities, but you're really trying to make opportunities for yourself.
For more information on work-based learning at Middlesex University, ring 020 8411 5050 or online at www.mdx.ac.uk/beyond training. Listen out for other podcasts in this series on YouTube. Search for University IWBL channel.